Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to be discussing monthly returns. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. We have discussed the thesis many times before this year that in the pre-halving years, we spend approximately half the year going up and half the year going down. And generally, what that has looked like in 2011 and 2019 was 5 of the first 6 months were green, and then 5 of the last 6 months were red. For 2015, it was slightly different when 4 of the first 6 months were red, and then we ended up having, 5 of the last 6 months be green. But what's interesting in that situation is we still had about 7 green and 5 red months. So in all prior pre-halving years, we saw 6 green, 6 red, plus or minus 1, because in 2019 and 2011, it was 6 and 6. Today, the current count sits at 5 green and 2 red. August is, of course, still in progress, so we cannot make any determination yet on what August will ultimately bring. Going into the month of July, I said that the average return for Bitcoin in July of the pre-halving year is negative 4.74%. The number that actually came out in July was negative 4.09%. So in this case, it's an example where the most likely outcome, or let's just say the average outcome, maybe not the most likely, but the average outcome based on the historical record in pre-halving years ended up more or less being what we saw in July, which is interesting because, of course, if you look at many Julys over the course of Bitcoin's history, the average return is 9% plus or minus 16%. Pretty large deviation there, large variance, of course. But when you break it down by the pre-halving year, you can see that it gives you a slightly different result. And if you take a look at 2019, it was about negative 7.5%. 2015 was about 8% in July, and 2011 was about negative 15%. Now that brings us to August. Going into August, what are general expectations for Bitcoin? Well, the average return in August for Bitcoin over all of its history is actually negative 0.6%. But again, there's a huge variance on this. It is at least notable, though, to say that out of all of history, the only 2 months that are on average red are August and September being very much more red than August on average. On average, in September, we see about a 7% decline. And you can see, in fact, that the last 6 Septembers for Bitcoin have in fact been red. For August, in the pre-halving year of 2019, we saw a 4.5% drop. In 2015, we saw a 19% drop. And in 2011, we saw about a 40% drop. If you average out the historical pre-halving year months of August, you will see that the average return on Bitcoin in August of the pre-halving year is approximately negative 21%. Be that as it may, 2011, we must note, has a pretty large drawdown. And so you could exclude that and only look at 2015 and 2019. When you do that, though, you still come up with a negative number, right? If you were to take negative 19% and negative 7.5%, negative 8%, you're still looking more or less at an average return in August of somewhere around 11, 12%, something like that. So what we've seen, though, in every pre-halving year, August has in fact been red for Bitcoin. But I would again go as far to say that the reason for this correction is not crypto specific. I think there's elements of it. I think that Bitcoin dropping below the 20-week SMA around Q3 of the pre-halving year, what it accomplishes is it washes out the remaining altcoin projects that are not going to provide any utility, or they have no great purpose being here. It washes a lot of those out, not all of them. There's always a few that kind of stick around, but it washes out quite a few of them. Furthermore, one of the reasons we see this correction by Bitcoin around this time is, of course, because of seasonality in the stock market, which we've talked a lot about, so I'm not going to spend a lot more time in this video talking about it. But I did at least want to provide the monthly returns table so that you can see that July more or less came in at expectations. For August, the average is negative 21% to the downside in pre-halving years. If you exclude 2011, it's more like negative 11 or negative 12%, something like that. For the record, just so we can go test this out, a negative, a 10% drop in August, if we actually go get the sort of the monthly where we started off the month here, a 10% drop would put Bitcoin back about $26,000, which I mean is not that far much. It's not really that unheard of. We were at 26K just a few weeks ago, or a few weeks ago. It wouldn't really be that drastic. You can see just in June we were at 26K. A 21% drop, of course, would be a lot more substantial, and it would put Bitcoin back at around $23,000. And that might be an interesting number, because if you were to look out that year-to-date ROI of Bitcoin, which we've talked about this chart a lot as well, and you average out 2015 and 2019, and you look at it in the context of 2023, these lows here, you can see would actually be below this low, and this low here was in that 24 to 25K level. So a correction by Bitcoin of 20% from the current valuation would put Bitcoin at around 23K, which is around where this base was for the average of both 2015 and 2019. But again, the purpose of this video was just to provide you a brief update on the Bitcoin monthly returns table. Hopefully this is useful. I do think while seasonality is important, it's always not everything, right? Like there are times when the historical average does not play out, okay? It does not always have to play out just because it played out in the past. And a lot of people have asked me my views on the SPOT ETF. And, there's always going to be something that could cause the path to deviate from the historical record. So again, there's no such thing as a sure thing. You should not look at monthly returns and say that it has to play out in the exact same way it did in the past. Just because July played out in the same way that the average of the last three pre-halving year Julys played out doesn't mean that August necessarily has to play out in the same way that has previously played out in the last three pre-halving years. But I do want you to be aware that there are some seasonality effects that have taken hold of Bitcoin around this time, and if it plays out again, then it would not be that different from what we've historically seen. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and again, check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye.